Do I want a cup of coffee? I feel like I'm gonna want a cup of coffee for this. Coffee in hand. Okay. I'm not going to script this because that's not really my personality anyway, and I feel like it would be less authentic that way. So that means I might be refilming this tomorrow. So I'm Tawny, known to more people online as Since We Woke Up, which is the channel that I have shared the conversion of a school bus into a tiny home and the travels within that school bus, and then more recently in the last few years when that school bus stopped rolling and parked permanently on a piece of land in Missouri where we're building a homestead. 8 years ago, my husband and I bought a school bus. We were personal trainers who owned a gym at that time, and I was really burnt out. I had some health issues, and even though it was very, very rewarding, it was also really exhausting, both being a business owner and training, because in many ways when you're a personal trainer, you are also an unofficial therapist to people. So I got really burned out, and the idea of bus life came up in my Pinterest feed one day. And this was back when it was still a pretty obscure thing. And I told my husband, I think this is like the thing. And luckily, he's very supportive and he listens to all of my crazy ideas, of which there are many. And he said, okay. And so 8 years ago, we bought this school bus from a school district in Montana where we lived at the time, and spent a year converting it into a tiny home and simultaneously selling our home and our business and pretty much everything we owned. And then we hit the road and we traveled for 5 years, not full time, off and on. We stayed parked with family in Montana for a good portion of the year, and then the other portion of the year we traveled. The reason we didn't travel full time is because I also have 2 children who are both adults now, who traveled with us part time, but I share custody with their dad, who also happens to be my best friend. And when we weren't traveling, we were parked with him so that our kids could be raised by all 3 parents, my current husband, my previous husband, and myself. And it was a really cool setup where the kids got to kind of have the best of all the worlds and all 3 of their parents present. So those were really, really beautiful years. Almost 3 years ago, it'll be 3 years this summer, we ended up moving permanently from Montana to Missouri. We decided we were ready to, we had a small, like, kind of urban backyard homestead going in Montana where he lived and where we parked, but we were ready for something bigger. And after 5 years of traveling, we were ready to settle down. And so the 5 of us moved all of our animals and ourselves and everything across the country down to Missouri. And for the last several years, we have been busy building a homestead here. So that is the more forward-facing story that people who have followed Since We Woke Up would know. And there's more details to that, and many of those you can find on my Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok profiles, where I've shared kind of more in depth through the years as we've gone along. But this channel's not about that. This channel is about moving forward. So what does that look like? So we live in a really interesting world right now because we're more connected than ever, and yet we're more disconnected than ever. And something that I have been realizing for the last several years, I've pulled back a lot when I first started sharing, I shared all the time and I shared everything. And then over the years, I just slowly started to pull back. I shared less of like family life. My kids and husband stopped appearing on the channel due to their request. I stopped sharing a lot of my own personal, like my mental health struggles and things that came up. It just, the bigger that those channels got, the less safe I felt to share those things that were deeply personal and sacred to me, like my family life. And also, I mean, I just kind of got niched into like your bus life and homestead life. And that was fine because I was happy to share those things without any obligation to share the things in my life that felt more private, my own inner world. So I shared a lot of my outer world, but I didn't share a lot of my inner world after a time. And then for the last couple of years since we've arrived here in Missouri, I actually pulled back of sharing a lot, even my outer world. And a lot of that had to do with time. Building a homestead is no easy job. But part of it was because it felt like there was just so much noise and so many stories being told and so much being thrown at us in our online worlds that I didn't really know how I wanted to fit into that. I didn't really know if I wanted to have a place in that anymore. I went through a period of time where I considered just not sharing it all anymore. But I decided that if I was going to continue to share, I needed to show up in a more full way, a more authentic way that bridged the gap between my outer world and my inner world. And that I showed up in a way that didn't just feel like I was making more noise, like I was contributing in a deeper way. And I realized that one of the reasons I didn't feel like I was sharing in a deeper way, one of the reasons that I felt less safe to be vulnerable, and one of the reasons that I had pulled back, was in large part because you get these quick dopamine hits. You're scrolling social media and you have, a 30 to 90 second video, these short form, reels that we're so accustomed to seeing. And you can't really tell a full story, like I can show you, like earlier today, I finished a video for short form media or my social media channels, and it was about making black walnut syrup out of the black walnut sap that we collect in the early spring. And I can show like a very brief synopsis of that, and I can show the process kind of from start to finish, but it's very quick. And I realized what I was missing was the story behind what I was showing. There's really no way in 90 seconds to tell that entire story, to show that entire process from start to finish and the nuance and the detail. And in that way, it really felt like I was lacking connection. I don't want to just create content that's consumed. I want to connect with people. I'm not here to just contribute more noise to this online sphere. I'm here to make connections, to have conversations. And it's really difficult to do that with those shorter form videos. Enter YouTube. So I've actually kicked around the idea of having a YouTube multiple times. When we first started traveling, we had thought about doing the YouTube, but I was way too intimidated by the thought of filming and editing video because I was brand new to it. When we came here, I, by that time, felt more confident in my videography and editing skills, but honestly, I think I just was too busy. This was so much to consider making that very often I just forgot to film. And that's also when the world seemed to start becoming really loud, and so it felt nice to kind of step back from it and just focus on the homestead. And now the homestead is running. We're entering year 3. All the foundations are laid. It's reached, kind of a homeostasis point where it's more caretaking than building. And similarly, I have reached an equilibrium. The last few years had a lot of deeply personal events and challenges arise that I barely knew how to cope with at the time, let alone film them and like try to process them in real time. But I think I'm ready to tell those stories now too. So, with all of that said, what can you expect This channel will be focused more on telling the behind the scenes stories. There'll still be plenty of like the aesthetic homestead and bus life content that people have come to expect from the Since We Woke Up channel. That will still be here. And I'm excited to answer questions that I've received a lot on social media that I just couldn't include in those shorter videos. I'm excited to have a place now to film much longer videos, more detail, answer questions, fill out those stories so that instead of just quick blips, you get to see a more full picture of life here. Like I said, connection is a big one for me. I think that the connectivity that we have online, I have relationships in my life, people I never would have met if it hadn't been for this online space. And so I'm deeply grateful for the ways in which social media has connected us. But it has come with a detriment and a cost. And I think that we can find ways to foster the good and overcome the negative if we create spaces like this where we're having real conversations, where it's not just clickbait, it's not just trying to get views, it's with the intention of having conversations, it's with the intention of true connection. And more than anything, that's what I'd like to foster here. The world has been very loud, and it's hard to have those real conversations when so many people are screaming. And I'd like to use this space to get back to that. I miss those conversations. So connection and community is a big one. I'd like to build a community here, fostered by those deep conversations and the more in-depth stories. And, you know, not scripting this could have been a mistake. Perhaps more than anything, though, I have begun writing again. So 5 years ago, we had been in the bus for 2 years traveling. I wrote a memoir by the same name, Since We Woke Up, where I detailed the lessons that I had learned while building the bus, and then the first 2 years traveling, and kind of this, what it felt like to downsize a life, but also in many ways, because of that choice, upgrading it into something that felt more authentic. And then I really did that book dirty because my father passed away several days after I released it. It was self-published, and I never promoted it. So, and life kind of happened after that. Like I said, lots of things happened in the last few years that I had to take time to process, and writing got put on the back burner along with the book. But I have begun writing again. It's something that I've always found a lot of joy in, and I have been kind of surprised by what's been coming out of me, and I realized that is part of the story I want to share, because that is the way that I process and the way that I share best is through my writing. So I needed a vessel big enough to hold that, and those short form videos are not that. If I'm honest, I think probably more than anything, I'd like to be able to be my full self here. Like, if we're talking about what you can expect from this platform versus the others, besides the more in-depth stories, besides trying to foster a community of like-minded people, besides sharing my writing, I think more than anything is I needed a corner of this world big enough to hold the fullness of who I am as a person. Because if I'm completely honest, I have really allowed myself to become one-dimensional on my social media. I'm basically just an actor in the backdrop of homestead and bus life. Like I said, I quit sharing my inner world a long time ago. And I can't say that it necessarily feels more safe, or that like I feel easy, it's like more easy to be vulnerable at this point. It's none of that. I think it's just that I've stopped giving a fuck. I turned 40 this year, and I realized that so many of these limitations I had placed on myself, and so many of these ways in which I had made myself smaller, I just wasn't really willing to do anymore. And that kind of includes my social media. And since we woke up, the short form platforms, I'm fine not showing up fully there, but that's also part of the reason that I don't have as much joy in creating there anymore. And so this is my chance to rectify that. Not only can I share that, like, my writing and the parts of myself that don't really have a place there, like those containers aren't big enough to hold them, but I feel like it gives me a chance to re-enter this space fully myself again. So as to what you will find me, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I don't plan on holding anything back here. The different things that I've wrestled with over the last few years, the behind the scenes that you haven't heard before as this entire story has unfolded. I plan on sharing pretty much all of it here because that feels good. It feels good to think about showing up fully, and in that way meeting other people who are also showing up fully, and that circles back to that connection and that community. So that's where I'm at with that. So in the next few weeks, the first couple of videos that you can expect, I'm doing a bus tour because it's been years since I've done like a full walkthrough tour, and those very quick like minute reels where you walk through just don't fully embody how very, very cool this school bus, and I'm biased obviously, but I've called this school bus home for almost 7 years now, and I think that's really cool. So I went through and I filmed an updated tour video that includes the renovations and the things that we've done since we moved here, now that he's stationary. I also have a video with some of my writing that I've done recently to kind of intro that and give you a taste of what that is going to be. And then I also have a video of farm life. And I'm really excited about that because I've been sharing homestead life and bus life for so long, but it's so nice to feel untethered and be able to like tell the whole story. And instead of thinking like, how can I make this fast so that you can get a taste of it, I get to actually like tell the stories. I get to like introduce you to my goats and my chickens. And so I'm really probably inordinately excited about the homestead videos, which is just more of the content that people are used to seeing from me, but in a much deeper and more profound way. And I'm excited to tell those stories and to introduce you to my goats because they're my friends. There's also going to be some weirdness on this channel because if I'm showing up fully as myself, I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of a weirdo. And the longer that I've been out here in the forest away from people, I think the weirder I've gotten. And so you're gonna see some of that because while I've been able to like keep it in check on my other platforms, if you're seeing the behind the scenes, then you are about to discover how very, very strange I actually am. Yeah. So you'll continue to find everything I've always shared, homestead, bus life, all of that aesthetic day-to-day content that I have so much fun creating on Since We Woke Up, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And then I also started a new personal page under my own name, Tawny McVeigh, on Facebook and Instagram. And that's for more like my writing and the behind the scenes stuff. And then this platform will bridge both of those. And so you'll find all of that kind of content, basically the full picture will be here in the longer form videos where I have room to actually tell the whole story. So thank you for coming along. I'm excited to start this new chapter with you. Cheers. I said picture instead of picture. Well, that'll be a blooper. Well, that was fucking weird.